Hello and welcome to Thursday's Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, where for the final time this week we give you everything you need to know about the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
My name is Jack Blanchard, Politico. With me, as you can hear, Sam Coates of Sky News. It is Thursday, November the 28th. It's Thanksgiving Day in America. We are giving thanks for the fact it's our last podcast of the week. I know most people are only like halfway through the week now, but for us, we sort of scrape ourselves out of bed on a Thursday morning. We're like, yes, we're almost there. There's only 20 minutes to go. As a special treat today, we're going to give you today's brief, and we're going to give a look forward to tomorrow as well, as we don't have a podcast on a Friday. But as we all know, anyone listening to this podcast will know it's a big day in Westminster tomorrow, Friday, given the vote on assisted dying in the Commons. So we'll do a bit of Friday as well as Thursday today. Sam, I gather we might as well do a bit of Wednesday as well, because you met a rock star in Parliament yesterday. Is that right?
This is one of those weeks where the whole of the Commons has had quite a buzz about it. I think largely because of what's going to happen on Friday. So there's lots of conversations between MPs. So it's been worth hanging around Portcullis House. But I didn't realise that actually I was going to end up meeting the rock legend Roger Daltrey. He had turned up, he's doing sort of charity work, and he had turned up with Nigel Evans, the former MP, former Deputy Speaker, in order to listen to Prime Minister's questions. And then afterwards, there he was. So I was delighted to meet the I Can't Explain sort of hero of many, and hear his account of and just how he upset the Speaker yesterday. He was sitting listening to Stephen Flynn, the Westminster leader of the SNP's question, and afterwards applauded, and the Speaker was furious. And then even more furious to discover that one of his deputies, who should have known better in the eyes of the Speaker, was sitting next to him, Nigel Evans. And Nigel Evans was sort of looking away and looking at his feet while the Speaker was haranguing Roger Daltrey in this surreal scene in the Commons. Apparently the Speaker turned to his clerk and said, Evans is avoiding my gaze, text him now, in order to rebuke him for bringing somebody who should behave in such a common manner in the chamber. So yes, that was my most surreal moment of Wednesday.
It's good to know that at the age of 80, rock stars can still hell raise like this, or at least the House of Commons version of hell raising, applauding the SNP in Parliament. Definitely a sackable offence. Let's talk about today then, shall we? The big story this morning, at least, is going to be migration. We're getting the quarterly and 6 monthly stats from the Home Office and from the Office for National Statistics, all coming in a big flurry at 9:30 this morning. That is obviously going to be a very big story. That is the reason we saw Kemi Badenoch suddenly pop up yesterday afternoon doing her speech on immigration to try and get ahead of these numbers this morning. And I suspect that when they drop at 9:30, Sam, they are going to dominate the conversation for quite a few hours ahead. There's various different things coming. The sort of the big official ones, if you like, I mean, they're all official ones, but the big ones that we've always chased over the years and watched out for are the net migration figures, which come from the Office for National Statistics. And on that front, everyone is expecting that they're going to come down. The last figures were very high, 608, well, very high by historic standards. You can make your own decisions whether this is high or not, but certainly by historic standards into Britain, very high, 685,000 people in the year to December. These next figures are going to cover the year to the end of June of this year, and everyone, Sam, is expecting them to come down. Now, this is a kind of weird one for Labour, because obviously the year to the end of June covers a period before Labour actually took office. Now, Keir Starmer has said he wants net migration to come down. We're expecting it to be coming down, but he can't really be claiming any credit for this because these are figures before he came to power. And of course, there were a lot of policies that the Tory government introduced before it left power, which will actually have affected this. You may remember, or listeners may remember, Tories bringing in various pretty controversial policies much earlier this year and at the back end of last year to do with banning international students, health and social care workers from bringing relatives into the UK. They hiked the salary requirements to be able to bring what they call a foreign spouse, a partner from overseas to the UK. Lots of upset and angst when they were announced in some quarters, obviously welcomed in other quarters. Nevertheless, they're expected to have a pretty big impact on net migration figures, and we will start to see that today.
That's right. You just have this sense that when those policy announcements were made by the Conservatives, about a year ago, there was, as you say, a lot of angst, but very, very noticeably, Labour didn't oppose almost any of them at the time. And that probably was quite a wise move ahead of today, because there is no doubt that although the figures will look very, very challenging, when you put them in context, the OBR is suggesting that as a result of the changes that James Cleverly pushed through when he was Home Secretary, net migration will fall from that high that you mentioned of 685,000 to around 300,000 in the next 3 years. So you can kind of see the trajectory that it's on. So Labour, without lifting a finger, is set to sort of benefit overall from those Tory changes. Labour is being very, very careful not to do anything that might themselves push that number back up again. So in the discussions with the EU is pushing for greater migration for under 30-year-olds, some kind of youth mobility scheme. Labour insists that the answer to that is no. That probably means that the deal we will get with the EU is less good than it might otherwise, and less comprehensive than it might otherwise have been. But Labour know that this figure, which was weaponised really first when Theresa May was Home Secretary, is still something that they are going to be judged by.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's, it's funny, the sorts of measures you were talking about would have been very hard for a Labour government to bring those in, given the outcry that Keir Starmer would have faced from his own MPs and some of his own activists. Some of them were seen as on the left as cruel measures that were sort of, splitting apart families, making it hard for families to live here in the UK. Other people obviously take a different view, but regardless of that, it would have been politically very difficult for Keir Starmer to do this. But he is now, shall we say, in a very crude way, reaping the benefits. And, this is a part of the Tory inheritance, as my Playbook colleague Sam Blewett put it in Playbook this morning, that he can actually cheer after all the months we've heard about the terrible inheritance they've been bequeathed. This particular set of policies, as you say, pushed through by James Cleverly when he was Home Secretary, when he was Tory Home Secretary, will actually continue to benefit Labour on this particular front over the next today and over the months and years ahead. Nevertheless, there will be people saying that the figure we see this morning, and it's lots of people still think it'll be, historically very high, maybe 500,000. You'll remember, Sam, well, David Cameron pledging to bring net migration down to the tens of thousands. The Tories don't talk about that figure anymore, but we're still a long way off that. There will still be plenty of people saying that this is still much, much too high. It's striking to me that Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, is doing a press conference this morning. He says about something else entirely, but nevertheless, you can be pretty assured that he'll be talking about these migration figures, and he'll be asked about them, and he'll be keen to put the boot into both Labour and the Tories, saying that these numbers are much too high and that we need a much harsher set of restrictions on migration into this country, because that's what people really want.
With very short notice yesterday, Kemi Badenoch, the new Tory leader, sprung a speech on us about migration. It was a very odd setting. It was sort of standing in front of a banner with a sort of massive shadow behind her. I'm not quite sure what went wrong there, but some sort of broadcasting teething problems there. But what we did get is the new Tory leader basically saying that the Conservatives got it wrong on immigration, and she accepted responsibility for the failure on that. And she said a couple of things. She said that under her leadership, the Conservatives would continue to promise to introduce some kind of cap. And then she made some comments about the welfare system, and basically she wants to curb the ability of migrants to claim benefits. Now, it has to be said that I was left really with the impression that not a lot has been decided by Kemi Badenoch on the issue of immigration, even though she was giving an immigration speech. Yes, she's committing to a cap, but of course we've got no idea where that cap would be set by the Tories. Does she think the European Convention of Human Rights is a problem, or does she think we should exit that in order to deal with this problem? Well, that's a maybe, not a yes, not a no. She talks about greater transparency, but of what, we don't know. And she was also talking about removing benefits, as I say, sort of not really acknowledging that actually no recourse to public funds is a huge part of the migration system already. Around 3.3 million people hold visas that have no recourse to public funds, i.e. you can't get benefits or any other public money at the end of 2023. Actually, if you talk to charities and stuff, that's quite a big driver of hardship, but it's also one of the big drivers of public opinion, because there is a huge amount of public anger at the presumed access of migrants to benefits. But there was a sense in which she was talking as if this wasn't already something that goes on, and but those conditions and the ban on claiming benefits is something that very, very much already is part of the migration system.
I think Kemi Badenoch was basically trying to get ahead of this today and ahead of the obvious criticism that will come the Tories' way, particularly from Reform and Nigel Farage. I would suggest that this is, this Tory inheritance. All right, maybe the numbers are down from where they were today, the net migration numbers, but they're still much, much higher than most people want them to be as an abstract figure. And Kemi Badenoch accepting responsibility for that and trying to move the argument on. I mean, she's been pretty clear that she's not going to have a detailed policy platform on very much at all at this stage of her leadership. And I think there's some logic to that in the sense that, we're a very long way off a general election, no matter what 2 million people who signed a petition might wish for. And therefore, does it really help the Tories to have very fixed, clear policy positions on all this stuff at this stage? You can argue the toss on that, but there's a logic to not having. Kemi Badenoch very much about vibe and communication at this stage. And I thought she did quite a good job of getting in front of this discussion and speaking about immigration in quite a thoughtful way. Obviously, lots of people won't agree with her, but more thoughtful than some of the Tory outbursts and approaches to immigration have been over recent years. That won't stop Nigel Farage going to town today. Of course, he will do very much. He's also talking, Sam, just interestingly, about the way Reform is expanding across the country, the way its membership numbers are going through the roof, he says, the way it's getting branches all over the country, and they really think they are on the march at the moment. They would say that, wouldn't they? But you look at the trends all around Europe, and it wouldn't be surprising to see Reform doing well. And so I think both Labour and the Tories will have a close eye on him today, not least because, Sam, it's not just the net migration figures that are coming out this morning. The Home Office is also publishing its quarterly updates at 9:30, and there will be new figures on small boats arrivals, on asylum decisions, on the use of hotels for would-be asylum seekers, detentions, returns, all those numbers coming out as well. And some of those are likely to be tricky, not just for the Tories, but for Labour as well, particularly the hotel use numbers. Officials are saying are not going to be jolly numbers. And given all the headlines around that, you could see that being something else that kicks off today and something Nigel Farage will be keen to make hay with. And he'll be very keen to present it as like, they're all the same. It doesn't make any difference if you throw the Tories out and you bring Labour in. It doesn't change anything. That sort of anti-establishment message that seems to have such traction with lots of people. I'm sure we'll be hearing that again today, given the numbers that are coming out this morning. Since the July election, 20,000 people have crossed the Channel in small boats. So that element of the migration picture is very much Labour's problem. And in October, this year's total surpassed that for the whole of 2023. So just at the moment, that is an issue. Keir Starmer likes to talk about how one of the things he's doing is tackling, in his language, upstream issues. That is effectively more or less trying to block, discourage, or empower other countries to stop people coming to the UK. I have to say, Jack, if the two drivers of global migration are wars and climate change, which and increasingly, I think the second is a factor. It is hard to see that putting a bit of money in overseas, Turkish, law enforcement is going to make a big difference when we are talking about people moving in huge volumes because of the sort of global instability. So sort of good luck to anybody facing this challenge. It is just a function of the modern day world in a way that it wasn't 30 years ago. Should we talk about the assisted dying bill, which is going to be in the House of Commons tomorrow and is going to dominate the news on Friday? We don't have a podcast out on Friday because, we have families to see and we need to catch up on our sleep. But it is going to be a very big day in the House of Commons. So we better talk about it a bit. The vote's still very much on a knife edge. Like, we really don't know which way it's going to go. There are various journalists and organisations keeping count of MPs who've publicly stated which way they're going to vote. Congrats to them. The latest one in the Times says of 508 MPs, just over half, 264 say they will back the bill, they will back assisted dying, compared to 215 who are opposed. So that is a reasonable lead for the assisted dying bill, but it does leave almost 150 MPs who haven't said which way they're going to vote. And there are some people, Sam, who think that the undecided, or maybe just undeclared publicly, might include quite a lot of Labour MPs who are against this bill but don't want to come out and say it because they don't want to annoy Keir Starmer, who we think is in favour of it quietly but doesn't really want a big Labour row about this. Well, good luck with that. That's happened anyway, hasn't it? So there's all to play for in the football parlance. And I think the most interesting intervention today is on the front page of the Times, Sam. We now have a former Prime Minister in favour of this bill to go with all the ones who are against it. David Cameron, Lord Cameron of wherever it is in the Cotswolds, has come out in support of it. He says he's changed his mind on assisted dying. It makes the front page of the Times, and he goes against the grain of other former Prime Ministers. We've previously seen Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Gordon Brown united on just about the only thing I could dream of them all being united, which is opposition to the assisted dying law. I mean, whether David Cameron is going to sway any minds amongst serving MPs, I have no idea, but a big name coming out in support of it on the eve of the vote.
So I was talking to some in the Labour Whip's office. Bluntly, they think it's more likely than not now that this passes. They say if the undecideds sort of split evenly, then it'll pass. Numerically, that looks true from the surveys. But they think that just the spectre of Keir Starmer walking through the yes lobby and backing this, even though he's not said he's going to do that recently, when he actually finally does do it, as we all expect, that will give quite a lot of the sort of waverers the confidence to do it. Because in the words of one person, you're going to be attacked by supporters and detractors of this policy, but having the confidence of doing the same thing as the Prime Minister does actually help you make the final decision. So we will see that the result will be a little after 2:30 on Friday afternoon, and will reverberate for some time to come. And I'm sure we will pick up about it on Monday morning. Anyway, that's 20 minutes from us. Have a very good weekend, Jack, and I will see you and speak to you on Monday morning.
All right, I will look forward to it, Sam. Thanks very much. I can hear the clanking of breakfast behind you, so we better go. All right, take care. See you on Monday.